4 runs. No outs. Top of the 5th. On paper, this was the least dramatic moment of the game. The Dodgers were already in control. The Angels were already managing a deficit that 4 innings of baseball had constructed with the patient, systematic efficiency of a team operating exactly as its talent level suggests it should. The score was comfortable. The situation was settled. The game had already told most of its story, and the story pointed clearly toward one ending. This was not a moment that needed anything more. And then Shohei Ohtani stepped into the batter's box for his 3rd at-bat of the afternoon. What happened next was not necessary for the outcome. The Dodgers did not need it to win. The scoreboard did not require it. The game, in its competitive arithmetic, was already trending toward a conclusion that this at-bat could not significantly alter. None of that mattered. Because there is something that happens when Shohei Ohtani steps into a batter's box, in any inning, at any score, with any number of runners on base or no runners at all, that transcends the competitive mathematics of the specific moment. Something that the people in that stadium feel regardless of what the scoreboard says. Something that the players on both sides of the field recognize regardless of what the game situation requires. Attention. Complete, involuntary, impossible to redirect attention. 40,000 people who had been processing a comfortable Dodgers lead, who had been relaxing into the specific ease of a game that appeared to have been decided already, snapped back into full engagement the moment his name was announced. Not because the game needed them to. Because Ohtani's presence in a batter's box is its own argument for attention. Its own reason to lean forward. Its own justification for setting aside whatever else the mind was doing and focusing completely on what is about to happen. What happened was massive. A double. Not a routine double. Not the kind of gap shot that a hitter produces when the pitch location and the swing intersect by ordinary chance in an ordinary moment. A massive double, the kind that produces a specific, distinct sound on contact, the kind that outfielders read immediately and begin running for without genuine hope of catching, the kind that the crowd responds to before the ball has landed because the sound alone has already told them everything they need to know. Shohei Ohtani's 3rd at-bat. Top of the 5th inning. No outs. No runners. Dodgers leading 4-0. A moment that did not need to be memorable. That became one anyway. The scoreboard said 4-0. What the scoreboard did not say, what it never says, because scoreboards deal in results rather than process, is what 4 runs of separation in the 5th inning of a baseball game between these two particular franchises actually represents. The Freeway series operates on its own internal logic. A logic that the standings do not fully capture and that the score at any given moment only partially reflects. There is history between these organizations. There is the specific competitive awareness of 2 franchises sharing a city, aware of each other in a way that teams from different markets are never quite aware, measuring themselves against each other constantly, interpreting every result in the context of every previous result. A 4-0 lead in the 5th inning of a Freeway series game is comfortable but not conclusive. Baseball's capacity for sudden reversal, the 3-run homer that transforms a relaxed game into a competition, the unexpected inning that collapses a lead built across 4 careful innings of excellent baseball, is too well established to allow the 4-0 scoreline to be read as a final verdict. The Angels' dugout knew this. The Dodgers' dugout knew this. The players on both sides understood that the game was being won but had not yet been decided, that the margin required continued excellence rather than passive protection. Which is precisely why Ohtani's 3rd at-bat carried weight that its surface context did not immediately suggest. With no runners on base and 4 runs of cushion, the at-bat could have been approached with reduced intensity, a professional at-bat, competent and controlled, designed to avoid error rather than produce excellence. Ohtani does not approach at-bats that way. He has never approached at-bats that way. The score does not adjust his standard. The situation does not lower his preparation. Every at-bat, at every point in every game, receives the same complete attention that the most critical at-bat of the most important game of the season receives. This is not performance. This is philosophy. And it is the philosophy that produced, in the fifth inning of a game the Dodgers were already winning, something that nobody in that stadium will quickly forget. By the time Ohtani stepped into the box for the third time, he had already faced this pitcher twice. The information accumulated across those two at-bats is something that most observers process as background context. For Ohtani, it is the foundation of everything that follows. Every pitch he sees in a game adds to an internal database that he processes with a speed and accuracy that the people who have competed against him describe as genuinely unusual, not just in terms of memory but in terms of application. The ability to take what he observed in the first at-bat and the second at-bat and convert it immediately into actionable information for the third. What pitch sequence did this pitcher use when he got ahead in the count? What does he throw when he needs a strikeout? How does his release point shift when he is working from the stretch versus the windup, and does that shift affect the break of his secondary pitches in a way that reveals what is coming before it arrives at the plate? Ohtani was carrying answers to all of these questions into his third at-bat. Not consciously, not in the deliberate way that makes the process visible from the outside, but in the automatic, internalized way that elite preparation produces, where the work done in the film room and the batting cage and the previous at-bats manifests not as conscious thought during the at-bat but as instinct. As readiness. As the specific, preloaded recognition that allows a hitter to begin his response to a pitch before his conscious mind has finished processing what it is. The pitcher had his own information. His own scouting report. His own preparation for this specific at-bat against this specific hitter in this specific game situation. He had everything available to a professional pitcher in the modern era, the analytics, the sequencing recommendations, the location targets that the data suggests give him the best chance against Ohtani's swing tendencies. He deployed all of it. And it was not enough. The pitch came in. In the fraction of a second between the pitcher's release and the ball's arrival at the hitting zone, Ohtani processed information that would require significantly longer to articulate verbally. Pitch type. Velocity. Location. The specific relationship between where the ball was and where his optimal contact zone was and what swing path would connect the two with maximum efficiency. The decision, to swing, how to swing, where to direct the swing, was made and executed before the conscious mind could have finished analyzing the input that produced it. This is what years of preparation produce. Not the ability to think faster, but the ability to bypass thinking entirely in favor of response that lives below thought. Trained, repetition-built, competition-tested response that operates at the speed the moment requires. The contact was immediate confirmation of a decision perfectly made. The sound, that specific, distinctive sound that Ohtani produces when bat meets ball with complete efficiency, moved through the stadium before most of the crowd had finished processing the pitch. It is a sound that experienced baseball observers describe as qualitatively different from the sound other hitters produce. Not louder necessarily, but different in character. More final. More certain. As though the result has already been decided at the moment of contact and the ball's subsequent flight is merely the announcement of something already known. The outfielder read it immediately and turned. Not because he believed he could catch it. Nobody who has spent time playing outfield in professional baseball believed, in the moment that ball left the bat, that it was catchable. He turned because his job is to play out the result regardless of its inevitability, and because the ball needed to be fielded wherever it landed to prevent additional bases. It landed in the gap. Deep in the gap. In the specific territory that doubles are made of, far enough to be uncatchable, close enough to the wall that the bounce kept Ohtani at second rather than pushing him toward third. He slid in. Standing on second base, in the top of the fifth inning of a game his team was already winning by 4 runs, with no outs and no runners on base before the at-bat began, and the stadium was responding as though the game had just been decided in that moment. Because in a way that transcends the scoreboard, it had been. Here is the detail that gets lost in the immediate excitement of the highlight and deserves to be recovered and examined carefully. No runners on base. No outs recorded. A 4-0 lead established before Ohtani came to the plate. These conditions, in the specific calculus of baseball performance, represent the least pressurized version of a plate appearance. The situation demanded nothing from him beyond a professional at-bat. A walk would have been acceptable. A single would have been excellent. Even a productive out, a ball hit hard somewhere, advancing no runners but making the pitcher work, would have represented a reasonable outcome for an at-bat that the game situation did not require to be extraordinary. Ohtani hit a massive double. Not because the situation required it. Because his standard requires it. Because the concept of an at-bat that the game situation does not require to be extraordinary does not exist in the internal framework that governs how Ohtani approaches every moment of every game he plays. This distinction matters enormously. Players who elevate in critical moments, who lift their performance when the score is close and the inning is late and the runners are on base and the outcome is genuinely uncertain, are valuable and recognizable and celebrated for exactly the right reasons. Clutch performance is real and meaningful and important. But players who maintain their standard when the situation does not demand it, who produce massive doubles in the fifth inning of games already being won, with no runners on base and no competitive urgency requiring anything more than professional adequacy, are demonstrating something different. Something rarer. Something that speaks not to the ability to rise for a moment but to the inability to accept anything less than excellence as the baseline for any moment. Ohtani cannot lower his standard. He does not know how to approach an at-bat as anything less than the most important at-bat of the game. The score does not teach him that lesson. The situation does not adjust the internal requirement he brings to every single pitch. That quality, sustained, unconditional, completely independent of external demand, is what separates the great from the historic. The massive double did something that the scoreboard did not fully capture. It changed the energy of the game. Not the score was already 4-0 and the double, with no subsequent scoring, did not alter it in that inning. But the energy. The specific competitive atmosphere of a baseball game is not fixed by the score, it is a living, shifting thing that responds to moments of excellence with a directness that no statistical measure can fully quantify. An Ohtani double in the fifth inning of a game being won, a massive double, produced with the complete technical efficiency of a hitter operating at the very top of his ability, sends a message to every player on both sides of the field. To the Dodgers, the standard has not lowered because the lead is comfortable. The man in the middle of this lineup is producing excellence regardless of what the scoreboard says, which means the expectation for everyone around him remains exactly what it always is. To the Angels, the lead is 4 runs and it just grew in energy if not in number. The pitcher who faced Ohtani with optimal conditions, a comfortable score, no base runners, no pressure, still could not prevent a massive extra base hit. What does that say about what happens when the game tightens? When the pressure increases? When the situation demands something from Ohtani that this particular at-bat did not? Both messages landed simultaneously. In the same stadium. In the top of the fifth inning. With no outs and no runners on base. The massive double did not exist in isolation. Nothing Ohtani does exists in isolation. Every at-bat, every hit, every extra base effort is a thread in a larger fabric being woven across a season that has been asking larger and larger questions and receiving larger and larger answers. The season's statistical arc, as it incorporates this double, continues to point towards something that the people responsible for maintaining the historical record of the sport are watching with the specific attention that genuine history commands. Not just the numbers themselves, the doubles, the home runs, the batting average and slugging percentage and on-base numbers that the analytical frameworks process, but the pattern within the numbers. The consistency. The absence of games where the standard lowers because the situation permits it. The relentless, unconditional application of the same preparation and the same approach and the same internal demand regardless of opponent, regardless of score, regardless of inning or game context or any of the external variables that influence how other hitters perform. The massive double in the fifth inning of a 4-0 game is a perfect illustration of that consistency. Not because it was the most spectacular thing Ohtani has done this season, it was not. Not because it changed the outcome of the game, it did not. But because it happened when it did not need to happen. Because the standard produced excellence in a moment that permitted adequacy. That is the real story of the at-bat. That is what the highlight, played on loop across every platform where baseball lives, is actually showing, underneath the impressive contact and the gap-splitting trajectory and the slide into second base. A player who cannot be comfortable. Who cannot accept less than his best even when his best is not required. Who brings the full weight of his preparation to an at-bat in the fifth inning of a game being won by 4 runs with no one on base and no outs recorded. A massive double. From a man who does not know how to produce anything less. The scoreboard read 4-0. The inning was the 5th. The runners on base numbered 0. The outs recorded numbered 0. And Shohei Ohtani hit a massive double anyway. Not because the game demanded it. Because he demands it. Every at-bat. Every inning. Every game. Regardless of score or situation or any of the external circumstances that give other players permission to be ordinary. He does not take that permission. He has never taken that permission. And in the specific, quiet, seemingly low-stakes moment of a third at-bat in the 5th inning of a comfortable Dodgers lead, the moment that most players would treat as an opportunity to be adequate, he reminded everyone watching why permission is irrelevant when the internal standard is high enough. The ball landed in the gap. The crowd responded as though the game had turned. The pitcher walked off the mound carrying the specific weight of having done everything right and still given up a massive double to the one hitter in baseball for whom doing everything right is sometimes simply not enough. 4-0. 5th inning. No outs. Nobody on. Massive double. Shohei Ohtani. The game did not need the moment. The moment did not need the game. It existed because he exists. And he produces because that is the only thing he knows how to do. Every time. In every inning. At every score. Even, especially, when nobody requires him to.